In this video, I'll be revealing the 10 assets that successful Canadian retirees consistently avoid, while financially struggling retirees keep buying them. Through analyzing the investment patterns of wealthy versus poor Canadian retirees, I've discovered that financial success in retirement often comes down to what you don't buy rather than what you do. That's exactly why I'm making this video today, to show you the assets that drain retirement wealth and why the financially successful consistently avoid these wealth destroyers. Let's get right into it. Now, before we get into the specifics, let's be clear. There are successful retirees who own a little bit of everything. What we're talking about here are patterns, the common threads that tend to separate retirees who preserve wealth from those who slowly erode it. And the first category is what I call the investment wealth destroyers. These are the assets or strategies that quietly drain portfolio value over time, not because they're always bad, but because they're misused or misunderstood. Let's start with high-fee mutual funds. Many Canadian retirees still hold mutual funds with management expense ratios, or MERs, of 2 to 3%. That may not sound like much, but over a 20-year retirement, those fees can easily consume 30 or 40% of your potential returns. Here's the challenge. Once you move from accumulation to income, those fees hurt twice because they reduce your returns and your income potential. Successful retirees focus on evidence-based portfolios, globally diversified, tax-efficient, lower-cost solutions. It's not about chasing the latest fund or product. It's about capturing market returns efficiently and keeping more of what you earn. Next, let's talk about GICs, or Guaranteed Investment Certificates. They have a role, and they can be great tools for short-term spending needs or to fund the next couple of years of withdrawals. But a GIC-only strategy isn't a retirement plan. Over long periods, GICs have barely kept up with inflation, and once you account for taxes, they often provide negative real returns. That means your purchasing power quietly erodes over time, not because you lost money, but because your dollars simply don't stretch as far. Some successful retirees use GICs strategically, usually as part of a defense bucket or a cash wedge, but they know that true wealth preservation requires growth assets as well, because retirement isn't a 5-year plan. For many Canadians, it's a 30 or 40-year journey. And that brings us to speculative investments like crypto or even chasing individual stocks in hopes of finding the next big winner. There's nothing wrong with curiosity or taking a small flyer, but successful retirees understand that these actually are speculation, not strategy. There are no guaranteed bets. Just think about how many Canadians had entrusted their retirement future to Nortel stock. Now, when you buy a company stock, you're buying a share of its future cash flows. You expect that company to innovate, create value, generate profit. When you buy a bond or even a GIC, you're lending money in exchange for a predictable stream of payments. And with crypto, there are no future cash flows. The value depends entirely on whether someone else is willing to pay more for it later. That doesn't make it evil, it just means it's speculative. And at this stage of life, speculation carries a risk you can't easily recover from. If a high-risk bet doesn't pan out, you can't simply go back to work for another decade to make up the loss. That's why successful retirees focus on wealth preservation, not wealth prediction. They own portfolios built to deliver consistent, evidence-based returns, globally diversified, balanced for their portfolios, and structured to generate income for the rest of their lives. It's not about getting rich from the markets anymore. It's about staying rich through them. Investment destroyers drain portfolios, but the real estate traps create ongoing expenses that successful retirees eliminate. Once the investment mistakes are avoided, the next set of wealth destroyers are the real estate and lifestyle traps that quietly drain retirement cash flow. Let's start with cottages and rental properties. For many people, a cottage represents family, legacy, and memories, and that's great if you truly live for it. But what I've seen time and time again is that a second property quickly turns from a dream into a full-time job. Property taxes, insurance, utilities, repairs, and endless maintenance can consume both time and money. The question isn't whether cottages or rentals are good or bad. It's how much of your life do you actually want to dedicate to managing them. If you're someone who wants to spend most of the summer at the lake, it might make sense to own that place on the water. But if you want a mix of travel, experiences, and flexibility, renting often actually makes more sense. You could rent a beautiful cottage for a few weeks or even a month each summer, often for less than what the property taxes alone would cost if you owned it. You get the experience without the ongoing obligations. The same idea applies to rental properties. While they can build wealth earlier in life, I often see successful retirees selling them once they step into retirement. It's not because the numbers don't work, but because the management burden just isn't worth it anymore. They realize that the time they spend dealing with tenants, repairs, and headaches could be spent doing what actually matters to them: travel, family, community, or hobbies. This isn't about financial success, it's about living well. True wealth is time, health, and freedom, and real estate that demands constant attention often works against that. Then there are timeshares and vacation clubs. These are an easy one. The ongoing fees, the restrictions, the lack of flexibility rarely provide good value. And wealthy retirees value freedom, being able to travel where they want, when they want, not being locked into the same week every year. And finally, luxury vehicles. This one's not complicated. Spending huge dollars on depreciating assets is a major drain on retirement cash flow. Successful retirees tend to prioritize value and quality, but they don't tie up large amounts of capital in things that lose value the moment they leave the lot. That's not to say you shouldn't enjoy a nice vehicle if it fits in your plan. It's about intention. The key difference is that successful retirees are deliberate about where their money goes. They eliminate unnecessary expenses and lifestyle liabilities, freeing up cash flow for what truly matters. They'd rather spend on experiences, family, or even their health than maintenance, insurance, or luxury payments that add no real joy to their retirement, right? So real estate and lifestyle traps drain cash flow, but the insurance and debt mistakes reveal how poor retirees sabotage their financial freedom. This next group of wealth destroyers are the insurance and debt mistakes that quietly trap retirees who should already be financially free. Now, let's start with life insurance. There's absolutely a place for permanent or whole life insurance, but it's a very specific one typically. It's best suited for retirees who've already achieved financial independence, have filled their tax-advantaged accounts, and want to create a guaranteed legacy for their heirs, because that's just a goal, or maybe there's a disability or someone relying on having that money show up when they need it most. In that case, the purpose is clear. It's not an investment, it's insurance designed to transfer wealth efficiently and predictably when you pass away. But for most retirees, the mortgage is gone, the kids are grown, and they're no longer needed to protect income. Paying large premiums in retirement to fund an insurance policy often just reduces the money available for living life now. So if maximizing your spending flexibility and lifestyle is your goal, permanent life insurance usually isn't the fit. Next, let's talk about seg funds or segregated funds and guaranteed minimum withdrawal benefit products. These are often sold as investment products with guarantees. But the reality is those guarantees come at a significant cost, often through fees that make high-cost mutual funds look inexpensive by comparison. They can limit flexibility, reduce returns, create unnecessary complexity in a plan that should be getting simpler, not more complicated. It doesn't mean they're never appropriate. In rare cases, they may help with, say, simplification or creditor protection. But for most financially independent retirees, they simply don't add enough value to justify the cost. The same logic applies to structured notes or principal protected products or PPNs. Anytime a financial product promises high returns and safety, it's worth asking, what's the trade-off? These products often sacrifice liquidity, transparency, or upside in exchange for a perceived protection. As researchers like Ben Felix and the team at PWL Capital have shown, once you account for the fees and structure, many of these hybrid products underperform simple evidence-based portfolios that rely on diversification rather than complexity. Successful retirees keep things simple. They value clarity and control over products that promise certainty but deliver constraints. And then there's debt. High-income earners often carry mortgages or consumer debt into retirement simply because they can. But even for affluent retirees, debt payments can chip away at lifestyle freedom. When income stops being replenished by work, every dollar going to interest or principal is a dollar that can't be used for experiences, travel, or family. Most successful retirees enter retirement with no consumer debt and most often no mortgage. That's not about being debt adverse. It's about maximizing flexibility, reducing monthly obligations so every dollar of retirement income is truly theirs to enjoy. Insurance premiums, debt payments, and complex financial products all do the same thing. They eat away at retirement cash flow and make your financial life harder than it needs to be. Simplify, reduce costs, eliminate unnecessary complexity. That's how successful retirees protect both their freedom and their peace of mind. Now that you understand what successful retirees avoid, if you need help with your retirement planning, click the link below to book a call and I'll analyze your specific situation to help you optimize your retirement plan as a whole. Now, after looking at the mistakes that drain wealth, it's just as important to understand what successful retirees consistently do right. They focus on simplicity, liquidity, and control, and they avoid locking themselves into products or assets that limit their flexibility. Instead of chasing what's new or complicated, successful retirees stick with what has been proven to work over time. Clear structure, cost control, broad diversification. Their portfolios are typically evidence-based, built around the science of investing rather than speculation or market timing. They understand that markets reward discipline, not prediction. This approach doesn't mean owning a particular product. It's about following timeless principles. Staying globally diversified so no single company, country, or sector can derail their plan. Keeping costs and taxes low because every dollar not lost the friction compounds toward their goals. Maintaining liquidity and flexibility, ensuring money is available when they need it without penalty or complexity. Outside of investments, successful retirees also apply the same mindset to their lifestyle and financial decisions. They choose to rent or lease for flexibility rather than taking on new ownership responsibilities that eat up time and energy. They often self-insure once they've reached financial independence, keeping insurance only where it serves a clear purpose, like estate or maybe some tax planning goals. And emergency funds are used to handle short-term surprises. These choices create both financial and emotional freedom. By eliminating unnecessary costs and obligations, they simplify their financial lives and reduce stress. They can spend more time enjoying what matters and less managing complexity. And ultimately, what separates successful retirees isn't just what they avoid, it's what they value: clarity, consistency, and confidence. Low cost, simplicity, global diversification, these aren't buzzwords, they're proven foundations of long-term success. This kind of structure aligns perfectly with what most retirees actually want: a plan that delivers more income, preserves wealth, and allows them to live comfortably without worrying about the markets or the next big trend. This disciplined, evidence-based approach creates lasting success. But the wealth preservation mindset shows why successful retirees think differently. The biggest shift that happens for successful retirees isn't just financial, it's mental. They move from accumulation thinking to preservation thinking. During their working years, the focus was on growing wealth, saving more, investing more, building the portfolio. But once they reach retirement, the goal changes completely. Now it's about keeping what they built, generating steady income, and protecting purchasing power for the decades ahead. That shift doesn't mean giving up growth or avoiding risk altogether, but it means being intentional about where risk lives and how it's managed. Successful retirees recognize that they don't need to double their wealth. They need to make sure it lasts. They also value simplicity and control over complexity and promises of high returns. They understand that clarity is what creates confidence. When your plan is simple, you know what you own, why you own it, and how it supports your goals. This mindset helps retirees avoid anxiety that often comes from chasing performance or reacting to market headlines. It's what allows them to actually enjoy their money, to travel, give, and live well without worrying about the next correction or financial fad. The preservation mindset is less about knowledge and more about discipline. It's about accepting that long-term success in retirement comes not from outsmarting the market, but from staying the course with a plan built to last. This is what turns financial independence into financial freedom. And now that you understand the wealth preservation mindset, let's look at the implementation strategy that puts these principles into action. So, putting this all into action, the first step is to complete a comprehensive review of what you currently own. Not just your investments, but your insurance, debt, lifestyle obligations. Look for anything that creates unnecessary fees, complexity, or ongoing commitments that don't add value to your life. The goal is to identify what's truly serving you and what's quietly holding you back. That includes high-cost investments that drain returns, unnecessary insurance premiums that no longer serve a clear purpose, and lifestyle liabilities that consume cash flow and mental energy. Whenever possible, look to replace complex products with simple, transparent, low-cost alternatives that give you more control and flexibility. Because transparency isn't just about seeing numbers. It's about understanding how everything fits together in your plan. And remember, complexity doesn't just come from product. It also comes from having too many institutions or advisors involved with no central coordination. That disorganization isn't just stressful for you, it can create real challenges for your spouse or your family if you're ever not here to manage it. Simplifying your structure reduces confusion and creates peace of mind for everyone involved. The next step is to focus on building sustainable income streams rather than chasing short-term growth. You want a plan that provides consistent, tax-efficient income, one that can adapt to markets and life changes without forcing big course corrections. That means prioritizing tax efficiency at every stage of retirement, coordinating withdrawals from RSPs, TFSAs, and non-registered accounts to stay within the right tax brackets, managing income to preserve government benefits like OAS, and above all, it means working with professionals who specialize in retirement planning, not just wealth accumulation or investment management. There's a big difference between building wealth and turning it into income that lasts a lifetime. This stage of life requires a different skill set, one focused on structure, withdrawal sequencing, benefit coordination, and long-term sustainability. When you strip away the unnecessary fees, reduce the complexity, and implement a system designed for preservation and efficiency, everything becomes simpler and more effective. You gain clarity, control, and confidence, the three cornerstones of a successful retirement. And now that you understand the 10 assets that successful Canadian retirees never buy, and while wealth preservation mindset matters more than investment selection, you can eliminate the wealth destroyers that keep struggling retirees trapped. If you need help implementing wealth preservation strategies that avoid these costly mistakes, click the link below to book a call, and I'll analyze your specific situation to help you optimize your retirement plan as a whole. And I'll see you in the next video.